Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, we are discussing a 2007 follow-up to 2005's The Vintage Tourbillon. Made in 25 pieces in white gold for 2007, this is the Vintage Tourbillon Mark II from Speake-Marin, a Swiss-based independent with British origins. The watch you see here embodies all of that. 25 pieces in white gold, really gray gold. We'll talk about that more in a moment. It's 38 millimeters in diameter by 14 millimeters thick, 50.3 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip, and it has a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. And if you've seen my review of the Vintage Tourbillon from 2005, then you know these measurements don't line up exactly, and that's because when artisanal watchmaking is taken into account, different materials, even if they're being built into the same fundamental design, sometimes result in slightly different dimensions. And that's why this case is not completely identical to the rose gold model. So go with the fit that I specify here and you cannot go wrong. On my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, you could see that it's a broad watch. Though it's a 38 millimeter diameter, it has a large stance across the wrist, almost like a breguet. And so because of those long thrusting projecting lugs, I'm going to recommend this watch for a wrist of 15 centimeters circumference or larger. Again, my wrist is 16, and the lugs are not out over the edge of my wrist, but they are getting there. I've pulled it down really tight here. The down the barrel shot gives you the best view. It'll fit underneath a jacket cuff. It's not as thick as it looks. It's very sheer and cylindrical. Still, it probably won't clear the tightest of dress shirt sleeves, but the jacket is just fine. The strap is high grade. We believe a good watch deserves a good strap. Actually, make that a great strap. Jean Rousseau of Paris is the OEM constructor of FP Journe straps, so when we think we have a match for a watch that brings out the character, we often jump at the opportunity. On the top, we have a blue woven textile with a black contrasting stitch, a little bit of bolstering, give it some volume, a folded edge on the bottom. We have a wonderful sort of inlay of rubber to separate the material from the moisture, heat, sweat, and grit of the wrist. So this augurs well for longevity, and you can see no crimping, no gouging. This is a brand new custom-made Jean Rousseau strap. White gold, you can see this is a Speake-Marin. You can even see the maker's mark on there. A Speake-Marin white gold buckle to match a white gold watch. I mentioned gray gold. Gray gold is the higher grade of white gold. It is a white gold that is truly white, homogeneous, so it's the same color all the way through, and it never needs to be rhodium plated. It's what you'll find on Rolex, it's what you'll find on JLC, it's what you'll find on Grubel, and of course de Bethune. Well, Speake-Marin was using it back in the late 2000s and uses it here. The strap is held on using screws and bars, which is an exquisitely expensive and complex way of attaching a strap to a case, but I love to see it because it's more secure than spring bars, and on a watch like this, it's definitely worth the extra expense and the extra split second necessary to dismantle this connection with screwdrivers as opposed to a strap tool. So I love to see that. This is the Piccadilly case, so named because Peter Speake-Marin is, of course, British. He was the brand founder. He created the company back in 2002. He became an AHCI member, or part of the Cool Kids Club of independent watchmakers, in 2004. And back when this watch was designed and built in 2007, his company was still only making about 200 to 250 watches a year, so this 25-piece run would have been approximately 10% of all the watches for one model year. And you can see some elements that are a reference to pocket watches, like this onion-style crown, again, because Peter Speake-Marin started as a restoration specialist. He wasn't initially making watches under his own name. He was doing something much more complicated and challenging, which is to restore old watches that occasionally require scratch fabrication of parts that cannot be repaired or cannot be sourced. Now, one of the main differences between this model and the original, the Vintage Tourbillon, and yes, the article is part of the name, It's the fact that here, instead of a chiseled solid gold dial, we have a precious metal base on top of which a thick layer of vitreous enamel has been applied, actually several times, up to 20 firings and 20 applications, the firings occurring in a kiln at 800 degrees centigrade, and a combination of white glass-based layers and clear glass-based layers. That's what I mean by vitreous. I mean the paint, when you're making enamel, is literally ground up glass, and each firing melts it smooth. Despite that, enamel is not perfectly smooth. It has almost an orange peel or sometimes a chalky-like texture, and you can see that in evidence when you get close to this beautifully handcrafted dial. We have the distinctive Speake-Marin style hands, which are fired blue, and then we have a polished cannon pinion on which the minute hand is mounted. We have a little power reserve indicator. Now, the watch actually has 3 power reserve indicators. It is a 110-hour manual line power reserve. On the back, we have 2 times Serpentine power reserve indicators. So one from hours 0 through 55, and then another one picks up at 55 and takes us all the way to 110. So it's actually a tag team of 2 power reserve indicators. But on the dial side, we have a little power reserve indicator that will turn red when you get down to 25 hours of power reserve remaining. So that lets you know you're in critical territory. Now, this movement was made by a company previously known as Progress Watch and STT. This base caliber, or ebauche, was originally known as the STT 13.75, which is a twin-barrel manual wind 110-hour tourbillon. Almost nothing about that movement is in evidence here except the general architecture of where the barrels and the drivetrain sits. So other than that geometry, all of this is scratch built by Speake-Marin, and exquisitely. If you've ever seen a bare STT 1375, go online, keep me streaming, but take a look at what that looks like. It's nothing like this, and that's before we even get into the freehand engraving on the bridges of the reverse side. First, we have dial side engine turning, or perlage, which I love. Second, you can see we have both black polished and fire blued screws, and that's just on the dial. Now, we also have anglage or beveling on the edge of the steel tourbillon bridge, but also on the edge of the bridge that serves as the dial mounting point. Now, take a good look at that bridge. It's been black polished across its top and finished to a specular execution that is mirrored with diamond paste. That's how you get that perfectly black polish. You can appreciate that the edges are broadly beveled. These are not narrow bevels, they're long and drawn out, and you can see they're even concave internally. We have points where bevels come to meet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sharp outward angles where bevels converge. That's as difficult to achieve as an inward angle, but it's not often recognized as such. We have a tourbillon here that is beaten away at 4 hertz, which is uncommon for a tourbillon. They're generally a slow beat rate. This is a high beat tourbillon designed with chronometry in mind, and I should mention that the watch was tested to and beyond the ISO 3159 that underpins the COSC chronometer standard. This watch comes with a certificate attesting that when it left the factory, it was running better than 3 seconds gained per 24 hours over 4 days. And keep in mind, the COSC test allows a watch to gain 6 seconds per day. This was 3, so a very good timekeeper, and it acts effectively as the seconds hand of the dial. You can also see the tourbillon has excellent finish and excellent depth on the dial side, and we have a lovely chaton-fixed genuine diamond as the capstone to the tourbillon on each side. So you can see a diamond capstone on each side. And if you like first and last serials, I got good news. This is 1 of 25. The Vintage Tourbillon Mark II, I told you the article was part of the name. Now, what's not standard across the Vintage Tourbillon models is the freehand engraving of the bridges on the reverse side. On the original, the Vintage Tourbillon, it was standard Geneva waves. Here we have an exquisite florizan, or floral pattern, much like banknote scrolling. And you can see that we have blued screws. We have jewels set in golden chaton, like a great vintage pocket watch. You can see the edge of each bridge has been beautifully mirror beveled. The same is true of the underside of the bridge for the tourbillon. We have these lovely blued serpentine hands, and all of this water resistant down to 30 meters. A very, very special watch. 2 mainspring barrels, so it has an even release of torque, not just 110 hours of power reserve, but very even torque release and consistent balance amplitude throughout that process. This is a fantastic and rare example of an early watch by an important modern independent, back when Peter Speake-Marin, the namesake of the brand, was still intimately involved in creating watches for his brand. A version of this movement he would later design for Harry Winston in the Ocean series and the Z series of Tourbillon watches. So he has done incredible things with this caliber, and on this watch he's truly made it his own. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.